Hello, everyone. I'm going to let some of you get into the room, and then I'm going to kick us off with a short intro. We're happy to have you with us today. All right, that number is starting to slow down, so I'm going to go ahead and get us rolling. Hello, everyone. This is Brittany Healy, and I am the Marketing Event Specialist here at Foundant, and I would like to welcome you to the webinar, and thank you so much for joining us today. In a couple of minutes, I'm going to turn this over to Sky and Holly, but before we begin, I want to go over a couple of things that you might want to know for the webinar. If you have questions during today's webinar, please open the box where you see the Q&A icon and type them in there. Holly's going to be answering questions today, so as they come up, go ahead and type them in, and we're going to try to get to all of them. Please note that we will not be using the raise your hand or chat features today, so please just type in your questions. We're also providing live closed captioning on today's webinar. Please note that these are automatic captions and may not capture our presenters' words with 100% accuracy. If you prefer, you may hide them by clicking on the closed caption icon and selecting hide subtitle. Interacting with that icon will also give you personal settings for things like size of caption or live transcription. And lastly, we are going to be recording this webinar today, so if you'd miss anything or if you'd like to review something, this will be posted to YouTube and you're going to receive an email with that link within 24 hours. All right, with that, I'd like to turn it over to our presenters whenever you're ready.
Well, happy day to everyone. We're excited to go over our C-suite release items. I think Holly led the last one in March, so we're going to catch you up with everything that's been happening kind of in this last few months. We're going to, let me introduce myself. I'm Sky Weber. I am the product owner for CommunitySuite. And joining me, like Brittany said, is Holly Spitz. She is the accounting manager for our products here at Foundant. So she will be manning the question and answers and the chat features for us today. Our agenda is going over our grants that just released at the beginning of June, the donations buckets, some fund advisor portal enhancements that we did, the fund enhancements, fund statements, systems data, financials, NACHA files, files and categories, tributes with email, and lots more enhancements that we have learned about from you guys taking things from Summit. It was so great to see everybody and be able to get that user feedback right there in person. We also have been diligently plowing through Idea Lab and trying to get as many things from Idea Lab out there from your user voice and get those implemented into C-Suite. So Holly, on Idea Lab, speaking of that, do you know how many stories maybe we've implemented since the last webinar, or do you kind of keep?
I looked that up this morning, and we addressed 50 Idea Lab requests in the last quarter, which really is amazing and shows the power of your voice. So please continue to submit ideas there and vote on other ideas. Those 50 ideas had 313 votes on them as well. So pretty powerful.
Yeah, awesome participation too. So yeah, so when we have our implementation specialists and our other client success people driving you to Idea Lab, just know that's where Holly and we are diligently going through that daily, weekly. We definitely go out there and try to hear your user voices and make your lives better. So we definitely take that to the developers on all levels. So all right, well, let's get started. Anything else, Holly, before I dive in?
Nope, that's all.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. All right, so I am going to talk through some of the enhancements that we've done. I'm going to start with the grants. I felt like that was a pretty big release that we just did in the June one. I may make this just a hair bigger. So we'll go ahead and get started with our grant enhancements. I'm going to start with the grant types here. So if I come to grant types, this is going to be populating a new area in profiles called philanthropic interest as well, but this is where it's populating from, is this grant types. Some of the things we did over here in grant types is we have the ability to archive and delete our grant type. So maybe I don't want to use hunger anymore. So I can go ahead and archive this one. Maybe now I want it to be my Health and Human Services. So you can see that it's tied to 8 grants, 1 grantee, and 1 philanthropic interest area. So I can go ahead and select that and then archive that particular hunger. And you can see that it is removed from my current list here. I can also drop into my archive types, and you can see that I have a couple of those that I've already archived. So that's from our home menu, and that's in grant types. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and look at that philanthropic interest. So I'm going to jump into a profile here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up one of my food banks here. From this main profile screen, you're now going to see that we've relabeled at the profile level from it saying grant type, it's going to now say philanthropic interest type. This profile here happens to be a grantee, and this is where we are now going to see our grant type. So I'm going to select my profile is grantee. It's taken a minute. And now you can see here, my default grant type is where I want to edit this here at the grantee profile level. I'm going to jump back into this profile. I also have the service area here at the profile level. So my grant type and my service area are going to be part of the enhancements we did in grants. I'm now going to jump over to grants. I'm going to create a grant. I'm going to use that same food bank grantee. You can see that the grant type has auto-populated into that Health and Human Services, and also my service area has auto-populated for me. If I do not have these set at my grantee level, they will pull from the fund level. So that will be my secondary area that it will populate from once I create the grants. I'm going to go ahead and put in a grant amount here and select my fund. Once I hit create, oops, let me go back just a screen here. From here, once I select my granting fund, let me select that again here and throw in a date. You'll be able to see that it is going to pull in my grant advisors from my fund advisor list. So this is going to auto-populate to the primary, and then alphabetically below, you'll be able to see any additional grant advisors. Go ahead and fill this back in here quickly, and then hit create. From this screen, I can remove Dan here, who's my fund advisor. Maybe I realized he wasn't the one I needed. I can add a new advisor here. I can see that it is going to populate, again, my fund advisors, but I can also search anyone from my profile list. So maybe there's another person that needs to be my grant advisor, so I can go ahead and select them from that list, but it will pre-populate with kind of my fund advisor list here. Another thing we did to increase the speed of processing grants is we added this pay schedule, which is a quick payment schedule. So I'm going to go into edit pay schedule, quick schedule, and I'm going to tell it I'm going to pay this $500 grant over the next 4 months. And then I'm going to hit create. This is going to go ahead and auto-populate the next 4 payments for me, or break my 4 payments out for me by month. Again, I can do quarter and year as well from here. All right, the next thing I would like to show you, I'm going to go back out here to my list here, is from my request bucket here. So this is coming if you have your fund advisor portal. You can allow your fund advisors to submit grant requests. So we now have the ability for you to create all of these requests in a batch. So that was a huge summit request. So we will go ahead and we've implemented that. So I'm going to hit create all requests here. Oops. Let me see here. These all need my fund advisor approval here. So I've set up the approval process, which we'll get into here in just a moment. I've turned on my primary fund advisor approval. So Dan Walker is my primary, and he needs to approve this before I can process it in C-Suite. So you'll be able to see that your fund advisor, you have the ability to turn on this fund advisor approval process. So I can jump into that next. So we'll jump over to the fund advisors. So that would be set at my fund level. If I come down here at my fund level, you can see that I have allow additional advisors and require the primary fund advisor approval. So again, that's fund by fund. So I do have that turned on. So that is requesting that I have my primary fund advisor, which is Dan, approve my grants before I process them. So if I log in here as Dan, I'm going to go into that fund here. I'm going to go ahead into my request distributions. And now you're going to see here, I have all of these grants here that need his approval. So I'm going to click into one of them. I'm going to go ahead and approve it. I'm going to approve a couple of these here so we can demo the other portion. All right, let me jump back into my C-Suite site. And now I'm going to go back into my request here, and let's create all the requests. So my 3 grants were created. I did have this one neighborhood impact mission, did not process. And if I click into it, it's going to show me we need to add this grantee. So those will only process and approve those grants to move on to the new bucket as long as it is a current grantee within your site. So this still gives you the ability to look at the grantee, make sure that it's someone that you can grant to before you just add it as a new grant. So that it will pause you there and let you decide if you want to add this one as a new grantee. So any questions so far, Holly, on grants that we need to cover?
I'm trying to work through the list. There's a lot of questions.
Okay.
But one of them, I will say we can answer a couple of these live. So can you require a percentage of fund advisors to approve? And currently, no, that's not an option.
Right.
If anybody thinks that would be a really good suggestion, can someone please go to IdeaLab and add it, and we'll look into that as an option. Right now, it's just the primary advisor. So can we change all previous grants to the default grant type if they were inconsistent or blank? And I believe we can do that in a custom report, but I was just going to test that out. Do you know the answer to that? I'll test it and answer it. I'll type the answer.
Okay.
Does the fund advisor receive an email when the grants need approval?
On the fund advisor portal, it does not notify. It doesn't send the request email.
Okay. So again, that might be something we need to address in the future.
Yeah.
Really good idea, Lab, but we're going to consider all these good requests as well. So
yep. So if SkyWeber goes on, they're wanting to have Dan receive the email saying that there's a request out there for them to.
Okay.
Okay.
Somebody, thank you, Alicia, I think, Alicia. I've already put the percentage for grants approvals in IdeaLab. So if anybody thinks that's a good suggestion, you can go out and vote on that one. Okay. And I think that's it for now. I'll continue working through the list.
Okay, yeah, so we really we're trying to improve that grant process. One other thing I wanted to show is under scholarships, that quick menu option, we also have it. So if I add a scholarship, I can also do that quick add. It used to just be by year, but I can also do month and quarter now. Same thing with the scholarship. So when we added those quick payments to the the grants, we also added that to the scholarship. So if it's an annual or if it's a quarterly, you can go ahead and set those as well. So just wanted to point that out, that that is now consistent in scholarships. The next thing we did was in donations, we created kind of that donation bucket like we have in grants and vouchers, things like that. So we went ahead and did that same model here in the donation area. I have turned on my review bucket right now. To turn on that review bucket, you would need to come down here into settings and then turn on this donation review here. So you would just edit the settings and then turn that on. So what this does is it goes ahead and drops your donations into this posted or new bucket, depending on if the donation is a new creation or if it's coming from Stripe, it's going to land here in this posted bucket. It will also land in your review bucket. This review bucket gives you the ability to look at that donor. If I pull up one of these donations, I can say, oh yeah, Sky's here, but I've got all of these very similar profiles. It's going to give you a quick preview of the profile. If there's a duplicate, maybe, when donors put it on the online portal, maybe I put Sky L. Weber this one time and I really want to merge those profiles together. I can make those modifications here and review that before I go ahead and process tax receipts and things like that. Kind of maybe just a new workflow process if you guys want to implement that. I can also mark this one as review. Once I mark it as review, it's going to go ahead and go to my next item to review. So it's just going to keep circulating through. And if I go out here to my list, I can see now that I've gone down to 10 that need review. So you will see that populate from there. The next item is you'll be able to see, excuse me, how many items still need that bulk receipt taken care of. So you can see that my $40, my $155 may have been here in my review bucket, but it's also here in my receipt bucket. So again, they can be in several buckets at a time. And then any tributes that need to be populated. So again, just taking the request from Summit and Idea Lab and trying to make this a little bit better workflow for you guys. So that is our updates to donations. Any questions there? Are we good? Okay, I'm going to keep moving on. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Fund Advisor portal. I talked a little bit about the ability to have the grant approvers turned on for your funds, but we also turned on some financial information from there as well. So if I go into my Fund Advisors, if I look in my settings here, I have the option to turn on my financials. So this would give them a balance sheet and an income statement, and then also the investment report. So if you're wanting to show that investment report to your funds, you can turn on this option, and you can also turn on the labels and label them how you want them to display on the Fund Advisor portal. So I'm going to go ahead and log back in as Dan here. Again, you would want to turn these on for your fund advisors, so you can turn it on individually. Maybe there's just a set of funds, maybe donor advised funds. Maybe this is all you want to turn the financial or investment reports on. You can decide that, and you can also set that in bulk. So just to show you the financials out here. So again, I've labeled my tab financials, so I can see my statement of financial position. So this is going to give me, I'm going to select last quarter here. So this is going to give me my balance sheet or my statement of financial position, however you guys refer to that. So I can see it here. I can also then jump into my statement of activities. It's going to keep that same date range. And then also here's my list of expense accounts and revenue accounts for this particular fund. I'm going to go ahead and jump to this parent fund here. So I can see my investment information. The sub funds will roll up into my parent. So this is where I can see that investment report information. So this is the investment report if you guys are using that, and you can see the percent, the change, and the investment income for this particular fund. I also wanted to point out from the home screen, our anonymous advisors are no longer presenting on the Fund Advisor portal. So if you had a fund advisor that was an anonymous profile, those have been removed. They won't show up there anymore. So We also made a few changes to the forgot my password. If you were the fund advisor and you were logging in, they were having some trouble with the case sensitivity. So with their login information, so maybe I was putting a capital S and it wasn't a capital S for my login. So we did align that with how the login sensitivity was being used. So we made a few updates. So hopefully you'll see a little bit of slow down on the request for I can't figure out my login and my forgot my password information from your fund advisors as they're trying to get into their site. So, okay, those are pretty much all of the fund advisor and enhancements that we did. Anything else, Holly, before I move on?
So there was one, is the approval from an advisor a default, or is that something we turn on as needed?
Yeah, you can turn that.
Yep, yeah, go ahead.
You can turn that on as needed and per fund. So again, if I go into funds here, I have the ability to activate that for that fund here. So this is where you can require that primary advisor approval here. So it's per fund.
Okay. A couple more questions, probably good to go back to real quick. So for that, the quick add scholarship payments, there was a couple requests out there for the ability to set a biannual, just click payment schedule. So I suggested going to Idea Lab. I know for scholarship managers out there, that would be a big win. So hopefully somebody can go and submit that and others can vote on it. And then also, if you create a payment schedule and make it to pay once for 4 years, so a renewable scholarship, they're asking, will the entire amount be taken out of the spendable balance at the time the pay schedule is built, or will it hit spendable once per year? So, yes, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, so yes, it depends on how you process the scholarship. So if you create the award and select that post by payment where Sky's hovering there, what that will allow you to do is post the award year by year. So only as the payment line is posted will it hit spendable. So you have two options. So it just depends how that is set up originally. Is that post by payment field set to yes, or is it set to no? And once it's post by payment is turned on and you post the individual payment line, then it hits spendable. So it gets a little confusing. I would suggest maybe playing with that in the sandbox environment and seeing how it works and post.
Yeah. So if you don't activate this post by payment, then the full 500 would be removed. Okay. It would function like the old.
Yep. Sorry.
No, you're good.
So there is a lot of things on the donation buckets. Can we go back there for a minute?
Sure.
So let's talk through them. Does turning on the review option stop the donations from showing up in the receipt bucket? No. So it's both. It would be in the review.
Yes.
So a donation can be in multiple buckets at one time.
Yep. So this stripe, I haven't reviewed this particular profile, but it's also already sitting in my review bucket here, or my receipt bucket, excuse me.
Yeah. So that is one thing to know.
Mm-hmm.
How then somebody asked, can we review that feature, the review feature again, and what that means? So maybe just talk about it one more time. This
review bucket?
Yes. And what does it mean?
Yeah, it does not stop you from receiving or processing your tributes. It's just a way for it to drop in here and say, okay, we want to look at these before maybe we process it. And that maybe is going to be something that you would want to set up as a foundation for your own personal workflows. So you could look in here and say, okay, here's all the donations that we need somebody to come in and review the profiles before we process the receipts. So maybe that's what your workflow looks like. If not, it's just a way for you to go ahead and know, okay, we have all of these that maybe need review, double check them before we move on and process. So again, that's going to be a foundation by foundation on how you want to set up your workflow or how you want to use this review bucket, because again, you don't have to turn it on if you don't want to.
And it's turned on in settings, right? In donations.
Yes, right here under settings. And then if I edit my settings, it will be here at the bottom, donation review.
Yeah. And then another question was, does the duplicate address feature only work in reviewing donations? So not exactly sure what you mean by that, but what it does allow you to do is check the donations and see similar profiles quickly from a donation record. So you don't have to go to profiles and look at the duplicate list. So just make it a little easier to see duplicates, and especially because duplicates happen so often with Stripe donations or donations from an online portal. So.
Yep.
Let's see, another question on the financial view in the donor portal was, can you designate which financial view format that the donor portal financials would display? And no, it's just the basic financial report. You cannot currently apply financial views to that. Okay, and then Pam said, please review how you turn on those two options for funds. And that was at 12:20, so I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll just quickly jump back into it.
Yeah.
So let me go back in. I'm just going to search here for that one particular hiker fund here. Again, if I go down here to my options, this is the require the primary advisor approval. You can activate that, which is a little bit different than this allow additional advisors. This is where you can have someone else submit a grant request on behalf of someone else. So if you have maybe I have my grandfather who's also a fund advisor and he's not very tech savvy, and so I'm going to submit a grant request on his behalf. This is where I could activate that for that fund, is I could have additional advisors for that particular fund as well. So a little bit different functionality between these two.
Yeah, and there was a question too, as I'm going through this list of questions about that. It said at one point recently in the fund portal, there was an option for a fund advisor to choose which advisor the grant should show it's coming in from. So it was here, right? Allow additional advisors. So if that is set, a fund advisor can come in. And so a good use case would be,
and then
potentially like a household. I'm an individual and I'm coming in to submit the grant request on behalf of someone else in my family. So
I don't know if I have it turned on for this particular advisor right now.
Yeah, maybe it's not turned on there.
I don't think
but that's what it would be used for. And then a parent fund, somebody asked to describe what a parent fund is.
Oh, okay. So so on my funds, I have, let me just show my list here. So I have this parent fund for my field of interest, and I have my individual fund. So sometimes if I have two separate funds, but I want it to report on the same fund statements, I would have a parent-child relationship or sub-fund relationship here. So that way I could use this rolling up into this and create one fund statement. So sometimes I see that with maybe if an agency has an agency fund and then their public side, like their endowment side, and I want to roll that up and just give them one statement, there's maybe a case use there for a parent and a sub fund. So sometimes I have those set up so I can do some different testing because things report differently with my parent and my subs. All right, anything else, Holly?
There is a question from Keely, and maybe if we have a question you can clarify, but curious about the grant review and approval process. When the update occurred, it stopped highlighting previously viewed items. I think we've changed that. So if you want to check it, if you can see Sky's screen here, there are blue and purple. It's just not, it doesn't come up as,
so
as
these
vividly, but yeah.
Yeah.
So they're saying it's a big headache for their approvers. They can't see it in the list, but I believe we fixed that, but it might just be that the contrast isn't as great as you're used to.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and dive into my next enhancement. I'm going to go into funds and I'm going to show you the bulk edit. So this was something that I was super excited about. Right here is probably one of the biggest things is when you're setting up your funds, if you're using the restrictions, being able to bulk update things and not have your funds list go on and on forever. This did remove the 500 limitation for the funds, so you can still populate as many funds as you want to here. These columns will stay static for you when you're looking at your different bulk edit areas. So the ID, the fund name, and the short name will stay static. And then you can change your different columns that you're wanting to work on. So this is restrictions. So maybe I just really want to look at my fund groups for this particular example. I can go ahead and set my fund groups here, or whatever the classification is that I want to look at. I can also, if I need to make a change to my public names or my short names, those can be populated from up here, and it would just pull that one item up here, so short name. So lots of different changes to the bulk update. It did not change the ability to still bulk update from my different groups. So if I still come into my groups and I pull up all my endowed funds, let's say, I can still use that bulk edit and select my attributes that I want to change, and it's still just going to pull all my endowed funds here together. So again, you can still bulk edit from your different fund groups, subgroups, divisions, or segments, or you can go from the home screen and bulk edit from here. And again, it's removing that 500 fund limit. Another thing we did is we made a change to balance swap where it's living. So it's going to be living at the top of your left-hand menu now. And then within a fund, so I pulled up one of my particular funds here on the left-hand side. We also added this opportunities to the left-hand menu so I could see if I had any opportunities that were tied to this fund. So those were a couple of the things that we did and enhanced on the fund side of things. So any questions there? Okay, I'm going to stay in my funds area. I'm just going to talk about fund statements here quickly because we did do quite a rehash on the fund statements a while back, and I just wanted to point out a couple of updates. When you're doing your formats here, just kind of a quick tip, I'm going to just pull up one of my formats. To make these process a little bit quicker, if I'm not using a particular section, I don't want to go ahead and activate that. So if I'm not printing a copy for each advisor and then putting their name at the top of my template, I don't necessarily need to have this box checked here. If I'm not going to populate the section on my fund statements that have liabilities or receipts or my revenue share, again, don't need to check those boxes, and that will help with the process time when I'm processing fund statements. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back into my fund statements here. Oops, let me go back into funds. And my fund statements here. I created a little demo one here just so we wouldn't have to wait and watch mine populate. So I went ahead and I've published my fund statements. I just want to show that paper statements are now sorting a little bit different. So it's going to sort by my advisor. So you can see Sarah here. She has 2 funds. So it's going to print by my advisor and then alphabetically by fund. So that way when I'm sorting and stuffing envelopes, I can very easily take her 2 funds and stuff them in an envelope together. We also, from the summit request, had the labels and envelopes where you can print them directly from this screen here. So I think that will be a huge time saver and not having to create those custom reports and merging. So super excited about those enhancements. And then email statements, we went ahead and grouped those back together. So those will also be grouped together by your fund advisors. So I think that's everything for that besides our log here. We added the date and timestamp and who created the fund statements. So again, a lot of those were requests from Summit. So always great to be in front of you guys and get the feedback. Another big request from Summit was within your sandbox. So I'm jumping over to my sandbox site here. So you can see that this is not my live site because I've got my big red warning here. I'm going to jump into systems data here. And then down here underneath my logo, you can see that it's going to show me the last time that my sandbox was synced. So that information, again, will live in your systems data in the sandbox site. Another big change for our systems data area was we collapsed all of these object settings, and then we moved them to the object that they reside in. So if I have grant settings, again, it's going to click into grant. I can still go there from systems data, but just knowing that these settings actually live here in this grants menu now. So if I go back, you can see I'm landed in my grants area. Here's my settings and content. Those permissions were also separated out. So if you have people that need to get into the settings, but don't necessarily need to be into the content area, you can break away those permissions. So just always like to kind of point out those. So again, within the object that they live in is where they will be residing now. All right. I'm going to look at financials next. We had several items from Summit were in our financial classes that we did. Just a few requests that we were able to produce pretty quickly. We still have some that we're working on, so I'm super excited to show those. One of those was the investment report, so I'm going to select this investment report here. And I'm going to go ahead and select my last quarter. So my books have to be closed to produce this report. So you can see now we've added this % column here for that investment report. So if you were using that, in the audit report, one of the big requests we had was for when I showed my account detail, they wanted to be able to see what account number it was displaying. So I can do my show account detail, and then it's going to now display the account numbers across the top. If I jump over to my income statement, so this is my income statement. Again, it's just pulling up that date range for me. I'm going to edit my options. Another huge request was to have my month over month, quarter over quarter, and year over year being one of the options that I could just select. So you can select your year over year now, populate those very easily. Another thing we did while we were in there is on the general ledger, one of the requests is when I'm exporting this on my raw export, was to have some additional fund details. So my fund groups, my divisions, things like that, a lot of the different fund attributes. So that way I could do further data manipulation if there was a group of transactions that I wanted to. So you'll now see that on the general ledger whenever you're exporting those reports in the raw form. All right, Holly, I'm going to take a quick pause.
All right, I think I am caught up on questions, but a couple of good ones came in. One was, what's the difference between settings and content?
Okay. So yep. So I'm just going to select grants over here. So the content area is going to be your items that are displaying out on the Fund Advisor portal, your grant catalog, your different areas that you're sending emails from. So that is the content that's, being displayed either inside a C-suite in some way, on the portals, on your emails, things like that. So that's the content area. And then your permit or your settings is going to help you with like where your approval percents are living, any of the features you want to turn on or turn off. If they're optional, they'll be living here in your settings area versus somewhere else now.
Yes. And then the other question related to this was a comment that this helps with controls. And that's because now you can segregate your permissions by, I'm going to call them object area. So by the different menu items, you can set permissions so that some settings for just donations, a user has permissions, but not the settings for grants. So it just segregated those settings out by object area.
Yeah.
Okay, we just did have a question on financials. On income statement, can you see the category headings on the report if needed? And then the next one was, the follow-up was, example, office expense, insurance, building, etc. So
are they talking like the functional expense categories? Is that what that was? Or
so I'm not sure because I was answering chat. So.
Okay, so if I did, I'm not. Yeah, so I'm not sure what that.
Kathy, maybe we can get, yeah, she says yes.
Functional expenses. Okay, yeah, that's a different report here, and I'm not sure that I have any of those set up right now. Let me see. Let me go into my functional expense. I don't know if I have any of my accounts set up for that. Let me look at last year. Yeah,
So,
let me just jump
sorry.
into an account here real fast. And then I'm just make sure I had some set up here. And I am going to do grant expense, and I am just going to set a functional expense.
And those functional expense tables can be user defined as well. So you can set up as many functional categories as you'd like.
Yep, so this is where it's going to populate the category on the left-hand side and then the accounts within that category. So if I had several different categories, fundraising, it would show those displayed that way. So, but we do have some changes coming to this report. So I would be maybe, we're going to modify this report a little bit coming in the July release, I believe.
Yes, and we just did get another question about that. Is it possible to get income statements by functional expense? And we're going to modify that statement of functional expense. But we didn't talk about applying that on the income statement. So not at the moment.
Yeah.
Another good idea lab request there. And then another question was, where do I find the GL report? So,
yep, so I just clicked into the report I was in. So, you know, if I was in my income statement and I ran it for last year, and let's say I wanted to look at the transactions in my unrealized, I could click into that one, and then that gives me the GL report. So I populated it from there, and I can jump into detail trial if I want from here. And again, I can export it or raw export it. So a little bit different options. So the raw export is going to give me all of those fund attributes. And then the export is just going to basically give me exactly what's on screen. So two different options there between export and raw export. So, but you can also print your GL from this general ledger here. You can do a date range, and you can select an account here and process the transactions for a particular date range. Okay, I'm going to jump into a few more things that we did enhancement-wise. The files, we added categories. So if you come here to files from that core menu, and then I could create another, maybe this is photos. I could create a category, and then you can add those to any of the files that you're attaching. So if I'm creating a file on a fund, so let me jump into a fund here. Oops. And I attach a file. So I'm going to choose a file here. And I could choose which category. And start my upload here. And then down here, I would be able to see, here's my fund agreement grouped together. Here's my photos grouped together. I can also still share from here and see the employee that attached it from here. I can also edit this. So maybe I grabbed the wrong file. I can also change the category from here, from that screen. One thing I do want to point out is just make sure on your files with this update, you may need to update your permissions as well if you want them to be able to create those categories. Another thing we updated was on the Nacha file. For those of you who are using the Nacha file, we had where we were creating the original file we created had a balance file. So it had a debit and a credit when you populated that notepad. So now you have the ability to turn that on or off. So if you say, yes, I want the balance file, it is going to go ahead and create the debit and credit side of those transactions. And if you do not want that, just make sure you don't enable that balance file. And then that will just create the credits that are leaving the bank there. So that was the update to the Nacha file to hopefully kind of catch more people that are wanting to use that Nacha functionality within our system. Another thing was in custom reports. being able to set your affiliates and supporting orgs. So I'm going to go down here in my custom reports here to a profile report. And then I'm just going to select my profile ID just to get us going here. And you'll now see here, once I were to filter down and create a report here, I could make the group of profiles, affiliates, or supporting orgs. So this bulk action was not here before, and now it is. A few more things that we have is under attributes. We have the ability to print all of them now, and you can choose between Word or PDF here from the attributes menu. We also have the ability to email from here. So some enhancements here around the tributes. We also have, when I list my tributes out, the ability to lock your notify. So if I want Sky to be my notify, if we were seeing where donors were coming in, they were setting the tribute on the donation portal and then maybe changing or creating a new notify for the foundation. And so that became a little bit cumbersome to manage. So now you can lock this notify. You can say, yes, this is who we want to notify. This is the frequency. This is the method we're going to do it. And then you can lock that. So that way it's not constantly changing for you. So those were our tributes. Another thing that we were able to update was on the admin fees. So I'm going to select admin fees. I'm going to go into fund fee types. I'm just going to pull up one of my types that I already have populated. And you can now see if I edit this, I can change, and maybe I want my DAF admin fees to go to a different expense account. I have the ability to change my expense account just like I was able to do with my revenue account. So that was a new enhancement for admin fees. On templates, we were able to add the fund division. We had some people that were needing to add that to their template letters on their grants and their scholarships. So if you were needing that, tax receipts, scholarship letters, and grant letters now have the ability to merge that fund division field on there if you're needing it. Also from campaigns, when people were printing envelopes and labels, it wasn't following the same functionality or logic, excuse me, as the profiles, labels, and envelopes. So we got that corrected under campaigns. Another thing was under logs. A big request was to see the date and the timestamp here in the logs area so you could see what time things were happening. So we got that updated. Under public securities, we were able to now sort those by chronological, the newest ones being on top. They really weren't sorting in any particular date range. So now your most recent public securities will be on top there. And another thing was a big request was for tasks to land here in the core section. So it is there on the home menu. And I think that is everything that I had for us to tackle today, Holly. So I will.
Okay, so a couple things. Let's see. Can you do a GL report for all accounts for the whole fiscal year? Yes. You want to show them how to do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just going to select a date range. Do I need to do the whole year?
No, but you can just show them how. So date range, if you have too much data, you might get a yellow warning that says this must be exported. So that would be the only thing. And then you would just drive to an export and have to do it that way.
Yep.
So, and then the file is asking, do they sort by date added or are they still alphabetical?
When I go to the fund level, it's alphabetical.
Okay, that's what I thought.
By the category.
And then several people have asked for some ways to bulk edit those files into categories. So we have 3 questions out there now. We have talked to our developers about that. So I'm guessing if 3 of you are interested, we should consider that. So we will take that under consideration. And I am not sure if that's an Idea Lab request, but if one of you could add it and then others could vote, I think that would be a great idea too. Let's see. Will there be more training on the Notcha file use? So that's something we could take back to L&D
Yeah.
and do a specific training on that. That's a great idea.
Okay.
Thank you. Can categories be added to attachments that are already in the system?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So you will see them on, and I don't think I have any that don't have categories. But you could go in and just add the categories. You can edit that. Sorry, my fund statements here. Let me see if I could. I think these all have, yeah, categories. But yeah, you can. They'll show up in a file that says no category, and then you can add them.
There was one question. Is there a specific permission needed to change file attachments or to move them into the categories?
The permission,
know.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think that if they have ability to create and delete display, I think they should be able to then add the categories here. But this category one is the one that kind of stumped some people when it first released, is that you have to have the ability to set those up.
To set categories. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is true. So they definitely need that permission to set categories, and then you'd be able to attach them there. All right. Let's see if we're. Yes, there's definitely going to be a recording. Just so you know, all of our webinars are recorded. You should get a link to that. As long as you register, you'll get the link to the webinar, but they're also available in that 9-dot icon up at the top. Let's go through this.
I saw on there the fund statements. If there's an email that kicks back, you will see that it will have an error for you. I saw that as one of the questions. So there is, it does display that.
Okay, so let's see. I'm trying to go through and do them all at like what is related to files first. All right, so somebody said they can't edit the categories, but they can add them. So in files and categories, that permission would allow someone to, if you have the category permission, you're going to be able to add and edit those file categories. If you have the permission to edit a file, you should be allowed to attach a category. Does that make sense? I think I'm explaining that right. So hopefully that answers that question. Okay, you talked about the fund statements. It would be useful to have a GL that is an actual report and not have to be exported. This is a basic report that most people use. So I do agree with that. We do have browser limitations. So our browsers, this is a cloud-based system, limit us to 2,000 lines, which is why we get that strange yellow message. So the only way you could have a useful GL report is if you narrowed down your parameters in that search. So you'd have to do one account and probably something like revenue share accounts, or your checking account is most likely going to get that red error after a certain point of time. So as long as you can narrow down the search and go to an account on a specific date, you do get that actual GL report. But unfortunately, we do have browser limitations and there is not a workaround there. For fund advisors on the portal to see financial reports other than statements, do we have to set this up in their fund somehow for them to show?
For them to see something other than the financial report?
For them to see the financial reports.
Yes. Yep. So you'll turn it on, and then you have the ability to bulk set that for like all of your fund advisors. Or if I go in here to Dan, you'll see here's my financial. Yes, I want him to be able to view that, and you can decide per fund, and same with the investment report. So those are, and you
it's
can,
under
again,
options, right? I think, or.
Yep, the settings, you'll have to turn it on here if that was the first. Yep. Okay, this will have you have the ability to turn it on in the portal. You can also then label your tabs here. And then you'll be able to then set it at the fund advisor level too, or you can set these in bulk too. So you can set the tab permissions too by bulk. So if I want to do by fund group and say all of my DAFs are going to get the investment and the financial tab, I can turn it on here or remove it.
Okay, back to files. There's a question, file categories are only for profiles and funds, correct? Not for files attached to transactions. That's not true. You can have multiple categories. You would just have the options. They're not specific to an object, but you would have all those options.
Anywhere you can attach a file.
Yep. Let's see what else we have here. How much time do we have left? We have 5 minutes. We'll try to get through all of these. So for tributes, is there a bulk sent function where you can select specific tributes? I know there was a mark all sent.
Yeah, so these will be, when you're processing this bulk here, then you can mark them all as sent here. This is the bulk feature here.
Okay. This is a general question. If the grant approval percent is not listed, what is the default?
If it's not set, it defaults to 100%. So 100% of your advisors will need to approve.
Yeah. Okay, here is another question about alert pop-ups. It says, can you set up an alert that pops up like the release notices do when you log into C-Suite? The alert would be tasks that you need done by a certain date. So your task, right, go ahead.
Yes, so your task will light up in red here if you have tasks that you need to complete that are past the due date, or if they're due today, they'll show up. Right. So here you can see in my sandbox, I haven't done any of my tasks in my sandbox, so I could click into it. Here's my current task. Okay, once I mark it done, it's going to remove that red box for me. So I could go ahead and mark that one done, and then you'll see the red box around my task is now removed. So that's kind of how we remind you that you have a task to do.
Okay, here's a really good quick question and a good answer for Stacy, who asked, pulling a fund balance report has changed. I used to receive the fund type with it. Now I have to pull 2 reports, fund balance, and then the fund type list. So can you show her how those options changed?
The fund balance report?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if we go into the fund balance report here, it's now sorting by the fund, so alphabetically by the fund. Yeah, and then you can set your options. So maybe I want to see it by my fund groups. So I can go ahead and set my fund groups here, and now it's going to go ahead and sort that. So is that answering her question?
I think so, yep.
Okay.
So this is the way you used to see it?
Yes.
So that edit options is the same thing for the audit report and the fund balance report.
Yes.
And you can group it now by any of your group, division, subgroup, or segment.
Yep.
Let's see. In regard to sending emails through C-Suite, where can we find a sent folder to see what has been sent to donors/fund advisors?
Yeah, so from your profiles, if I had email sent, I may be in trouble here because I don't know if I've sent any from my donor here. So you would be able to see your email history here. So this should show me any of the emails that I've sent out. So here's my donation tax receipt that I've emailed out to Sky. You can see that its status is delivered, but it's at the profile level. Okay. Well, we are right at time.
Yep. One last question. We had some chats too, and I want to make sure we get that. So
okay.
Since the post by payment feature for a scholarship doesn't hit spendable, I assume if a student becomes ineligible for future funds, remaining scheduled payments can easily be deleted or adjusted.
Yes.
Yes. So you never posted it. So basically what you would do is, I'm thinking
you'd have the ability
yeah.
You'd have the ability to, this one's not posted.
You would, yeah, I would say you could delete the unpaid lines and then adjust the scholarship amount. Yeah, the award amount, and that would really work there. And you're welcome. Julie said, thank you. These are so helpful. We love that feedback. We're hoping to go to a cadence of maybe even monthly that aligns with those monthly release notes to help everybody out. But we also really, really, really love all your feedback as well. So thank you. We're right at time. And I think let's make sure we got everybody else's. Let's see, is there a tribute function for grants? That looks like the only one out there. No.
We don't have a tribute for grants. Idea
I'd
Lab.
love to hear more. Yeah, Idea Lab, and explain what that means, like why you need a tribute. And so that would be a really interesting thought too.
Yeah. Well, we have some really great things planned for July as well. So I'm excited to be able to show you what's coming in July at some point. Really appreciate you guys spending your lunch hour, if it was your lunch hour, with us. And hopefully we got everyone's questions answered. Again, go to Idea Lab because Holly and I are spending lots of time out there. So we love to hear from you guys, and have a great rest of your week.
All right. Thanks all.